Corey, Jim, and I were just talking about it. This game needs to be given some kind of mantra like the underrated bowl or something out there. People, wake up to this one. This is going to be huge in regards to Big Ten circles. Indiana and Iowa meeting, a tremendous conference game, of course, with these two schools getting it on at Iowa City. We got Corey Barata on the line, joins us on a regular basis, of course, and is our stalwart there over at the Iowa channel. So if you love Big Ten football, the Hawkeyes, or just want to follow one of the top programs in the Big Ten, join us on our Iowa channel. And, of course, Corey's got it locked down there at from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Also joined on the Indiana side from Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat Radio. And also Jim is the publisher and founder of Rivals on Indiana Football and Athletics. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us tonight.
Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here. Happy for football to be back. I was just remember being out and watching. It was the Illinois game. I was looking forward to seeing it, but just I remember seeing the first moments of that game. It was like, it was a moment, and I was like, man, it was just to see the motion, but everything came right back. You're like, get out of bounds, do this, do that, and it's funny how things just come right back.
Well, Jim, this is not the NBA where the season's over and then you wait like 3 weeks for training camp to start. You know, we have the longest off season in sports in college football. So these games are precious. There's only 12 of them.
Absolutely, man. And they are getting more and more precious. As we saw last year, what happened, we almost lost them. But this year we get back and then now we don't know what the future is going to be. There's so many other things to think about and talk about. But this season is looking to be, at least in the Big Ten, pretty daggone incredible. And I think it's going to be pretty daggone good across college football.
Corey, of course, again, great to see you as well. Jim, you being the more recent guest, Corey, people are getting used to seeing him all the time. We'll start with you, Jim. Everybody's asking about Michael Penix as to whether he is just at full strength, ready to go. How does he look right now?
When I spoke to him at Big Ten Media Days, and that's been 6 weeks ago now, he has a whole new frame on him. And you can see this V cut. You can see a physicality to him that he didn't have before. And not that means you can't get injured, because we've seen it happen. We saw it happen to Teddy Bridgewater. We'll always say the Teddy Bridgewater injury. It sometimes freak things happen, but he has put on a substantial amount of muscle, and you can see it. You can see it when he walks, but the confidence that they had, all of them, up in Indianapolis, it was palpable. And so, I mean, this entire team, I was thinking about, this is the 5th year for Tom Allen. So these are all Tom Allen guys. So these guys are Tom Allen to the core, all of them. And then even add the transfers, they're Tom Allen to the core now. But you've got 5 years of Tom Allen's culture that is now taking hold with these players.
Corey, these last couple of weeks of Iowa camp, what has stood out to you? And of course, I want to direct everyone to Corey's live stream that he produced this past Saturday. Tremendous couple hours right there. But what have been the storylines most recently with the Hawkeyes as they prepare for this huge opener?
That's a good question, Mark. I think depth is the biggest, and that's kind of the discussion that I had with Don on Sunday. In that live stream, Don Patterson, former Iowa assistant coach under Hayden Fry. I think depth everywhere is kind of the big question, and certainly having a spring this year helped things. I think for a team like Iowa, developmental program, last year hurt. And so I think fans, when they saw the 0-2 start last year and, people looking at that like Iowa was derailing, Ferentz kept it together. And so now you take that next step forward. Can you develop guys? I've heard good things about Luke Lachey at tight end. They need depth there. Sam Laporta is probably a future NFL tight end, as typically every Iowa starter is, but they need depth. They need depth at tight end. They need depth at linebacker. They need depth in the offensive line. I produced a show or a video today on the Iowa channel. Kyler Schott, Iowa's starting left guard, is out. He was baling hay and hurt his foot. So kind of an Iowa-like injury there, but And obviously everybody knows the offensive line is crucial to Iowa's success. So, as I said to Don on Sunday, and people can call me a homer all they want, I'm predicting that Iowa wins the West. And again, I have not predicted. Anybody who's followed me and our podcast over the years, I do not predict that every year, in case people are wondering. I think Iowa has the makeup of a championship team. The one thing that can derail a team like Iowa, and can derail probably any team, especially the Wisconsin like, or probably even Indiana for that matter, is injuries. Iowa loses its starting tight end. Iowa loses its starting tackle. It just changes everything. So the good news out of Iowa for camp is the Kyler Schott injury is the one significant injury that I've heard about. I think Kirk Ferentz, if there are more injuries, he's done an excellent job keeping those on the down low. But if that's the case, if that's the one significant injury, then I think we're looking at a really, really high. I think we're looking at a high quality game this Saturday either way. But I think Iowa has an excellent chance to get it done on Saturday.
Jim, before we continue to really dive deep into the nuts and bolts of these two football teams, I want to broaden the scope just a little bit about the program there at IU. And I'm going to liken Tom Allen to another personality in the conference, because people bring up PJ Fleck, and it's often thought, okay, trying to determine, okay, is this guy really, is that the real PJ Fleck, or is he a salesman? Is he authentic? And with Tom Allen, I don't think that's the question, but he's just this personality and just this bundle of energy. What is it about him that makes him the guy that he is, the guy that has turned around this program, the guy that gives these players hope that they can do really big things in this conference?
Well, the number one thing is that he is completely sincere, and I'm saying that from a media standpoint, and that's just being around him enough, a lot, where what you see is what you get all the time, 24/7. It doesn't matter what scenario it is, and he is true to his word. What he tells these kids, they know that he's going to be there. I think he's going to be at Indiana for a long time, but who knows? I mean, someone could come in, and if he does something crazy things happen. But barring that, I think he's going to be at Indiana, and that is continuity. He's building something, and he's doing it. He's not doing it in an easy place. He's not, I don't want to crack on the ACC, but right now they're way down. So if you were building up something there, it would be easier. He's not. He's building it in like the toughest place you could possibly do it, the Big Ten East. And how he's done it, it's a head shaker, because Indiana hired the Cam Camerons, they hired the Jerry DiNardos, they hired the names and all that, and it didn't work. And the guy that had no head coaching experience whatsoever has come in and transformed a program that has done really, besides Bill Mallory, that they had some success there, but for 50 years it's just been a dormant program, and it's just been so fun to watch.
And just to follow up on that, it has been the butt of jokes around the Big Ten, not just for the product on the field, but the lack of fan base, interest,
and deservingly so. There's still no. I don't think there's an excuse for that. It just isn't. It should not have taken this long to fix a program. My gosh, I mean, I know I'm not saying it's easy, but man, every program in the Big Ten has had their ups, including Northwestern. Where can there be a harder place to do it than Northwestern? I mean, man, they've been to the Rose Bowl. So yeah, I don't let Indiana off easy, but it's all positive now. So it's going in a direction that I don't know that anybody would have predicted 5 years ago, other
Jim,
than Tom Allen.
I would challenge you on is it harder anywhere else? I think Vanderbilt fans may have something to say about that, but yeah.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
Corey,
no question.
before we let you cut loose, and you guys can go back and forth, and this show will probably do best if I kick back and just listen to you two really dive deep with the Hawkeyes and the Hoosiers. But you had made a statement before we came on, just your perception of how this game's being perceived or not being perceived or put on the national stage or even the conference stage that it deserves.
Mark, what's Iowa ranked coming into this game? I think they're 18.
18, correct?
And Indiana is 17.
17.
And so
I still think that Iowa has way more respect than Indiana, even though they are ranked.
Well, Jim, we got to stick
together
together on this. I watched the Fox broadcast on Saturday morning, and I don't think they mentioned this game once. They were previewing all these Week 1 games, Ohio State, Minnesota. I mean, you can go down the list, and not one mention. And if I'm wrong, I hope somebody can comment on here, but I didn't hear this game mentioned one time. And I think all of us as Hawkeye fans were watching that game because it's Big Ten West team. So that kind of, I'm sure that didn't sit well with Iowa fans or Indiana fans for that matter. I kind of go back to what you brought up initially, Mark, with Michael Penix. I think that's kind of what Iowa fans, we don't wish anything. Iowa fans don't wish anything bad on Hoosier players or on any opponent.
I understand. Players. That's a hard thing to, I get that. That is a hard ground to tread. Yeah.
But I think in the back of everybody's minds, they're hoping, hey, maybe he won't be ready until week 2. I mean, I think Iowa fans, there's no question they take Indiana seriously. And there's no, I mean, unless Jim knows something I don't, there is no rivalry between Iowa and Indiana anywhere. They're
very self-respected. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of respect, I think, between these two programs. And I think Kirk has, if he wasn't humble, I think he's a humble guy. Again, I'm a homer, I guess, in that regard. I think if he wasn't humble before last year, he is now. And I'm sure I know he really respects what Tom Allen's doing. I think Iowa fans respect what Tom Allen's doing. I mean, that Indiana program, I'll just say this, during a COVID year to make the advancements they were able to make last year with a tough schedule. I mean, you're playing in one of the toughest conferences in America. I think if Michigan and Penn State didn't have a bad year, I could say this more outwardly. But I think besides the SEC West, maybe the toughest division in college football. Mark, you may say the SEC East is up there, but you're a Buckeye fan. So what they did last year was spectacular. And no, Iowa fans are taking this team seriously. And I think it's split right now as far as obviously I think Iowa's got the line right now last time I checked, but I think I could easily see Indiana win this game if Iowa has one or two turnovers or at the wrong time, or this is going to be a toss-up in my mind.
Oh, I think it's going to be a close game, no doubt. But I don't know that Indiana is going to require turnovers. Although they have built their part of their foundation is built off of that. I mean, how many? I think his total turnovers last year was like 19. It was crazy. Interceptions, something like 16, and that was in a shortened season. They went way over the previous record, and that secondary is back. And I think this defense is actually much stronger because you've added some pieces to that front. You've added a new coordinator, Norm Charlton, and they've added they've done some tweaking and just added some people. And this and some of these people are returning as they're All-Americans. This is a stronger team, a faster team. And they are pretty solid on defense, and they have depth. That is something that this team this program has never had, period, on either side of the ball. But they've got the depth on defense. They've got some interchangeable parts in there. And these guys are just hungry, and they still have a chip on their shoulder, and that's that Tom Allen in them, and it's fun to watch, and I can't wait to watch. I mean, thinking of starting this season with a game like this, I'm like, man, no offense, but I'm glad it's not Western Kentucky or whatever, because this is like boom right out of the box. That's ding ding. It's like nod your head and let the bull out.
Maybe I shouldn't feel this way, Jim, but at least from a general consensus of what I've heard from Iowa fans, I think Iowa fans kind of feel the opposite. So maybe this is a bad sign for Hawk fans, because I think Iowa fans, the 0-2 start last year didn't help. When you start conference play that early and you lose to Purdue and you lose to Northwestern, you blow a 17-0 lead. I think Iowa fans would much rather start with, a South Dakota State or a Kent State. So maybe that's an insult to us as Iowa people. But maybe that shows a little bit of a difference in mindset. I think Tom Allen's gotten it done. Again, I think it seems like line play has improved immensely. We've seen from Maryland in past years that just because you've got skill position talent, tremendous skill position talent, doesn't mean you're going to be consistent, be able to win games consistently, especially in the Big Ten Conference. But you mentioned, Jim, at the beginning of that topic, the defensive backs for Indiana. And I think that is my biggest position to watch on both sides, because you look at Indiana, and I've had a lot of Indiana fans say, I think we had some on our broadcast Sunday, can Iowa throw the ball downfield against IU's defensive backs, not only because of the talent in the secondary that Tom Allen brings to the table, but also the struggles of Spencer Petras at quarterback last year, especially early on. He hasn't played. Here's a kid who hasn't played in front of a crowd, home or away. So is he going to be able to throw the ball downfield? And then on the opposite end of things, Iowa's defensive backs are probably as strong, I think, collectively as they've been, at least in recent memory for me. Iowa's kind of become, with Phil Parker being a former defensive backs coach and obviously the defensive coordinator now, they've kind of gained this reputation for just pumping out cornerbacks, kind of like they pump out offensive linemen and tight ends. But I think a lot of people from the outside don't realize that usually it's one All-American or one first team first all Big Ten type player a year. And now they've got two. I mean, I think of Desmond King, I think of Josh Jackson, Michael Ojemudia. Those guys were basically playing on an island each of their best seasons. And now you have Riley Moss and Matt Hankins. Hankins opts to come back for an extra year. I think it's going to be tough for Penix to find room. Ty Freifogel reminds me of David Bell. I've been saying that for the last 2 weeks, not just because they wear the same number, but I think just from a athletic standpoint, they've got great hands. I mean, obviously you can give us more insight on Freifogel, but he is one of the more impressive wide receivers in not only the Big Ten and in the country, and there's no doubt about that. So that, I just think it's intriguing on both ends. And of course, then it comes into question the health of Michael Penix. Is he healthy to a point where he's going to be able to scramble? I always worry with a guy with a coming off an ACL, whether he's a quarterback or not, his ability to move. So no, I think that if I was to pick one position battle, it would be defensive back versus quarterback.
Yeah, I think that Indiana is so solid there. Not that Iowa is not good, because they are. I know they've been very good over the last couple of years, but Indiana is like I said, they're not just solid, they're deep. They're deep and interchangeable. I don't see Indiana having problems giving up yardage in chunks, scores. I think that's going to be important, because Indiana is going to now, other than that, they're going to have to rely on their front. Last year, they were pretty good in the sacks department. And if they can do that as well, then that's good. That's a good day for your defense. But that's asking a lot. You're going up against a very good, well-coached team that has a ton of talent on it, that always has great tight ends. But Iowa is going to have to rely on their running game. And I don't know if they can slow Indiana down. This offense, I've seen them in practice, but they limit what we can see. Sure. They protect Michael Penix. He hasn't been hit. He still hasn't been hit. The first time he's going to be hit is when you see him get hit this Saturday. And I'm not concerned about his health. I have zero concern about him being healthy. I mean, him staying healthy. That's the $1 million question there. But I started off earlier talking about he's put on bulk. He's definitively looks much bigger, stronger. I was like, ooh, I was taken aback.
He was a skinny guy last year.
He was, yes. And Lamar Jackson is the only guy I've seen that can get away with that.
Yeah.
But he's a 1 in a million, man. He's a snake. He doesn't take the hits. He just never has. He didn't. I didn't see him in high school, but I saw him at Louisville. He just didn't get hit. It's like, boy, it just didn't happen. And it's like, wow. But unfortunately, and it doesn't always have to be a hit, as we've seen with this recent one with Michael Penix. But hopefully, with medicine getting better, that everything is. There's not going to be an issue there. Other than that, he looks incredible. And his arm, that's the one thing about him. He's always just had this unique laser type arm. It comes out like a rocket and just so he just once he gets comfortable. I remember 2 years ago at Michigan State, he threw for 20 straight completions. He was just short of the record, and actually would have had the record, I think, if it hadn't been for a penalty that got called in the end zone, but because he ended up throwing a touchdown right after that, I think, but he didn't get the record. But that was 2 years ago, and he was still learning. And he's gone through a lot of hardship and learned. And Tom Allen has done a great job of bringing different coaches in when they've had to replace people that, even though it's not been Michael's position coach, Delon McCullough adds a lot to any team. You just came from a Super Bowl winning franchise, 2 years removed from winning a Super Bowl with a Patrick Mahomes and company that you were around, that you were able to study, coach, to, be a part of that. There's just, that's gold right there. I mean, you're just bringing gold into the program.
And a gold nugget that I just picked out of what you just got done talking about, Jim, was the pass rush of Indiana against Iowa's offensive line. Let's remember, if you're an Iowa fan listening, that there's a good chance Iowa starts 2 brand new tackles in this game. Jack Plum is listed as the starting left tackle on the most recent depth chart, but I'm hearing more and more, Mark, that Mason Richman will start at left tackle. That may not happen. Mason's a young guy. A lot of hype around this young man. I don't remember hype around a young guy like this since probably James Daniels, as far as an offensive lineman, who, of course, now is a starter for the Chicago Bears. So a lot of hype around this kid, but he's never taken a snap in college. And right now, you've got Nick DeYoung starting at right tackle for Iowa. So pass rush could be interesting. The good news for Iowa, we've seen Iowa break down in pass protection from the interior of the line, at least I think back to 2019. I'm extremely gun shy about 2019, the likes of Michigan and Penn State just killing Iowa up the middle over and over again. So now it's going to be a bit different. But another thing for Iowa fans to remember, and for Indiana fans to realize, is that Petrus he's not, they may have the same first letter of their last name, but they are totally different style quarterbacks. Petrus is a statue, and there's no question. That's not changing. He is a statue in the pocket. So the good news is, if pass protection breaks down, as any offensive line guru knows, if pass protection breaks down from the outside, then he's able to step forward in the pocket, make a throw. If it breaks down up the middle, you're done. So that may actually help Spencer a bit get settled if the inside of his line, of course, anchored by Tyler Linderbaum at center. I think the best player, maybe one of the best players in the country, definitely the best player in the Big Ten, in my opinion. So yeah, I think pass protection, that's going to be an excellent storyline to follow as well, Mark.
Iowa, Indiana, folks, and want to let everyone know that they can catch Corey's postgame show on the Iowa and Big Ten channels, as you can look back with he and Coach Don Patterson this past Saturday night on the Iowa and Big Ten channels. There's just a wealth of content there on the Iowa channel. And we are hoping, and I should say we're very pleased and happy to have Jim Coyle here from, again, it's Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and also the publisher and founder of Indiana's Rivals platform. So, Jim, before we continue with the football talk, I just want to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can find you and your work.
Well, they can go to thehoosier.com for the Indiana Rivals side, complete coverage of Indiana, the recruiting, all the games, all of that, as you get from any rival source, of course. But today is the last day for an 80% off special. So you've got a few more hours for that to kick in. That's $20 for the entire year. It's like $1.68 a month. Thehoosier.com. I host Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're on each day. We're on radio stations like ESPN in Evansville, WBRO and Marengo, a few others. And most people are starting to follow us on YouTube, which that's becoming the rage, I guess. But yeah, we're on YouTube, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. You can find us there every day, Monday through Friday. guest, different co-host each day, and different guests throughout the weekend, throughout the season. People like Don Fisher join us, the voice of the Colts, voice of the Pacers, lots of different types of guests. But IU, the Big Ten, Indiana high school sports, pretty much everything across the board if it's in the state of Indiana and outside.
Corey and I are hoping that YouTube is the rage.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you foresaw that years ago. I do want to answer Gary's question while you have it up here, Mark. What if IU nudges by Iowa, then Iowa knocks off Iowa State in the Cy-Hawk game? Worst case scenario if you're a Hawkeye fan. Worst case scenario completely. The Iowa State game means nothing from a Big Ten standpoint. It's not a Big Ten game yet. I say yet because I still think there's a chance Iowa State joins the Big Ten in the coming years, but that's for a different discussion. But if IU nudges Iowa, you're 0-1 in the Big Ten, and so you have bragging rights for what, the 7th straight year in the Cy-Hawk rivalry. So that would not be a good thing, Gary. I think if you're an Iowa fan, no question about it, you'd rather lose the Cy-Hawk game. I know some Hawkeye fans will put that game above everything else, but again, if you're talking about goals, that would be the worst case scenario because you lose to Indiana. Not only are you hurting yourself in the Big Ten race, I don't see an 11-1 Iowa team making the playoff, and I'm not saying the playoff should be a goal of Iowa fans this year, but you're probably not making the playoff at 11-1. If you didn't make the playoff at 12-1 in 2015, minus the outstretched arm of LJ Scott from Michigan State, you're probably not making it at 11-1 this year. So that would not be a good scenario, at least in my opinion.
You don't think an Iowa team with wins against Iowa State, Wisconsin, obviously you're throwing a loss in there to someone, as a Big Ten champion, so they will have beaten, I'll have Jim cover his ears for a second, maybe a top 5 Ohio State team in the Big Ten championship game, or an Indiana team that's paved the road to Indianapolis. You don't think that a Big Ten champion Iowa team with one loss?
I guess I really wasn't entertaining the idea of, I said 11-1. I guess 12-1, including a win over Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. I think there may be some reconsideration there. I just know in 2015, at least the general consensus was Iowa had to beat Michigan State. Now the schedule was weaker, I think, that year, but Iowa did get a win on the road at a ranked Wisconsin team where everybody knows it's tough to play in Madison. So I would like to think that, especially early, I think kind of like the NCAA tournament, I don't think it's quite as crucial with college football, but when you lose early, you'd like to think it doesn't hurt you as much as a late loss in the season. But I still say I'd rather lose to Iowa State than Indiana, no question.
But if they lose to Indiana and finish 11-1, they will have the opportunity to win the 12th game because they will have to have won the division because they will have beaten Wisconsin.
That's true. That's true.
Why do they have divisions in the Big Ten?
What's the question, Jim?
Why do we even have divisions in the Big Ten?
You want a 14-team lineup in the Big Ten?
Well, that doesn't matter who you lose against. It's still they're not set up that way. It's not set up to. You could lose to Iowa and it cost you the division title, rather it being someone in your division. I think it should just be the losses in the division.
Why don't we just redistribute the divisions every year?
Definitely need to do that. Yes.
And do that based on projections, based on returning talent. Mark, this is a new topic for discussion.
Boy,
maybe this will catch on.
That would be not. Oh man,
is this a serious?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Proposal?
Like a seating. Man, you can't think of the committee for that. Are you kidding me?
Everybody always
look at
everybody
the
knocks
for
the
a
Big Ten
championship.
West. Everybody knocks the Big Ten West. Let's redistribute it. Let's just.
It definitely needs to be changed.
Let's not go back to Legends leaders.
I don't knock the Big Ten West. I actually think the Big Ten West has raised the game in recent years, and it's more balanced than the Big Ten East.
Oh my gosh, there's no way.
More balanced than the Big Ten East.
You've only got who's going to be good in the West this year besides Wisconsin and Iowa. I mean, Minnesota,
not Nebraska.
Oh, obviously. I mean, their coach may not even make it throughout the season.
Big Ten Network said this was the best Minnesota team they had seen in their history of going to Minneapolis preseason. I don't want to. I saw there was a Gopher fan on here tonight. That stood out to me.
if you run the win-loss numbers between the two divisions, it's almost equal. And we know Ohio State's hardly ever losing to anyone. And we know Rutgers and mostly Maryland are losing almost every game. The Big Ten Western Division is more balanced. They just lose the championship game all the time.
It
To almost the same team every time.
But the scales are not quite equal there, Mark, right? I mean, you're playing 2/3 of your Big Ten schedule against your own division. So
sure.
I don't think you can carry that equal weight. I know we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but I mean, Jim pointed out I've never heard this idea before, but you kind of got me brainstorming here.
They got to do something. It is. I know you guys don't think it is, but most people, and I agree, it is imbalanced. It's always, and it's not because of Ohio State, because they heavyweight anything. Well, no, they would overweight anything if they were in any. They're in a different league than anybody right now. Than that's in the Big Ten. I mean, Penn State is as close to them as anybody else. Wisconsin's just not as consistent enough to be there. Penn State just hasn't won enough. But Ohio State is in a different echelon than anybody else in the league right now. And that includes Michigan, who hasn't beat them since, Abraham Lincoln was in the White House now, it seems like. So they're kind of running away. Is anyone ever someone has to beat Ohio State at some point?
Well, the division will get a lot more balanced, Jim, if Ohio State leaves for the SEC. So I guess
that's not going to happen.
All right. It might not, but it would balance it out, wouldn't it?
Your idea is solely because Ohio State exists. Is that why you came up with this idea? Is that the reason?
You talking to me?
Yes. So
no.
Okay. You want a 1 through 14, no divisions, 1 through 14, the top two teams in the conference, a la the Big 12, go to the conference championship.
No, I'm not saying they could do that. I'm not saying that that's realistic. But the current divisional lineups, if you're going to have divisions, then make them divisions. Make them just like the divisional losses are what hurt you on whether or not you win or lose a division. The Big Ten just counts everything.
Well, everyone counts everything. How would you weight? That would be really confusing to people. What are you going to give extra weight to a loss within the division?
Well, then you're giving weight to a division. So
I see his point here, Mark. I'm not saying I agree with that portion of it. I see his point.
I see his point, but I think it's just difficult and confusing for people to track. Oh, we just lost a division game. What is it going to be worth? Like 1.75 wins or losses?
Man, all they got is numbers are flying everywhere today. So just one more little column's not going to hurt anything. They got numbers everywhere. They see that's just another betting source.
I was with you.
The over and under for the divisional games now.
Jim, I was with you for the first 2 minutes of that, and then you kind of lost me there at the end.
Well, let's bring it back to 2021 and IU and Iowa. I'll ask you this, Jim, since we did mention the elephant in the conference. What separates Ohio State and Indiana in your eyes in a game based on interpretation last year that Indiana fans and some observers will point to 42-35 one-score game? Others will say Ohio State got a little loose with it in the fourth quarter. Where is Indiana
got loose with it? Indiana turned the ball over
to that degree, and where do they need to continue to improve to reach that status?
The first is just easy. It's always depth. Ohio State is so deep, and when I say that, people don't understand. The bottom of their bottom are Division I starters at a lot of schools. I'm not saying at Alabama and or Auburn, but they're Division I starters at schools. That's what they have just in a row. That's why they're able to turn out these quarterbacks after quarterbacks that are protected by these linemen that all go to the NFL, because it's a factory. Clemson has become a factory. Alabama has become a factory, and they've done it well. And it's not a complaint against them. They're just doing it better to a higher level right now. And I wonder how can some teams catch them, but Indiana has done it the old-fashioned way, as hard as I don't know how else to say it, but they're just from the bootstraps up. And Tom Allen has built that program with kids that were cast-offs. Michael McFadden was a two-star. He's an All-American. That's talent development, and that's what Indiana has to do. They rely on developing talent. They rely on finding nuggets and developing those into diamonds. And that's what they've done. But it has to be this fit that Tom Allen has created in his culture. And he does not waver. It doesn't matter. It has to be the right fit. I've heard him say it too many times. I've been around too many of the players and spoken to them and interviewed them and talked to them. They're all on the same page. I mean, and that is a powerful, powerful thing. I have never seen a group in athletics more on the same page than the Indiana football program. And it's cool to see because it's a positive thing. Everything they do is in a positive way. They're thinking about the team. And so everything that they're geared towards is positive and winning. And they're in it together, and now they have talent and coaching to go with that. And so that's a lot of ingredients that just wasn't always there in Bloomington. And now it is. And I think you're going to see a hell of a game on Saturday, but I think that Indiana, I think the reason that Iowa's only a 3.5-point favorite, I think that is a compliment to Indiana, because to me, if you're only giving up 3 points at home, that's a tiebreaker. That's a coin flip to me. So that tells me Vegas says, yeah, Indiana's a little stronger than people think. I think Indiana is a hell of a lot better than Iowa people think. I think that they could be in for a shock. This offense is fast. Indiana has a running game that they have not had. That's something else we haven't talked about yet. They added Stephen Carr from USC and Delon McCullough back in the fold, as I talked about. Those are just gigantic pieces to add to an offense. The running game has not hurt them in the last couple of years. It just has not helped them. If that makes sense. It hasn't done anything. There was no long runs. There's no getting you out of trouble. Stevie Scott, he could kind of bulldoze through for a little bit, but that was about it, man. I mean, that doesn't work. You've got to have more there. And they have that now. They have a little more, even though they lost Samson James, who that was a blow. And of course they lose him to Purdue to add insult to injury. But yeah, they're more complete now. The offensive line is more mature and it's older now.
I will say this: you brought up the run, and I have no doubt that the run game has improved. But Stephen Carr hasn't taken a snap in an Indiana Hoosier uniform yet. So, and I read today that he is the starter. Correct, Jim?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Keep him on the depth chart.
I don't know. I haven't looked into, and maybe you and Mark have a better idea of this than I do. I really haven't looked at what Stephen Carr did at USC. But, Iowa does bring, reigning first team all Big Ten running back Tyler Goodson to the table here on Saturday as well. I don't think Iowa fans are going to be surprised if Iowa loses this game I'll be surprised if Iowa loses this game by 2 scores. But if Iowa loses at home, I'm not surprised. I don't think most Iowa fans are surprised. Like, there's a lot of Iowa fans who are still calling for Spencer Petras to be benched. And maybe that's just because fans are delusional. Not calling Iowa fans delusional, so don't hate on me for this. But I think that's absurd to even think about that at this point. But I just don't think Iowa fans, if they win this game, believe me, it'll be bring on Alabama, bring on Clemson, heading into that Iowa State game. But I think you're selling yourself a little bit short there, Jim. I think the respect, at least here in Iowa, is very high for that program right now.
And it very well may be, but and I think it goes back to we talked earlier about this game being one of those that just overlooked. And I'm like, how are you missing out on this? This is a great great game. It's just you got Kirk Ferentz, man. That's Iowa. It's Iowa, and Indiana is its own story now. How just continue. And someone asked about college game day, and you got all the relationship stuff that comes involved with all that. But yeah, I'm like, how are you ignoring this game? What a great game. It just it doesn't matter. I'll be there to watch it. So they're missing out.
I agree. I agree. I go back to the narrative. I just doesn't seem like anybody's talking about this game. So I give Mark a lot of credit for making this show happen. And who does Indiana have week 2, Jim?
Week 2, they come back to play Idaho. That's so they get a little breather.
Yeah, but there is a bit of I don't want to call it an edge. I don't know if it's an edge or not, but I kind of feel like, at least from the media's perspective, and I'm sure the coaching staff is taking one game at a time, as I'm sure Don Patterson would advocate for. But Iowa gets Iowa State week 2 on the road. Potentially, I predicted this many months ago. Heard rumblings that game day is at least a strong possibility if Iowa takes care of business this Saturday. So there is a bit of a difference.
I read that somewhere today.
And I don't know if the players are lumping these two games in together, but I think if I'm a fan of either one of these two teams, I'd rather play Idaho. I'd rather have a game like Idaho week 2 than a game like Iowa State. I'm not saying they're looking ahead. That would be foolish to look ahead. But I just think it potentially it clouds your focus a bit, even unintentionally. I don't know if there's any substance to that, but I guess that's my naive thinking on it.
This is going to sound cliche, but they don't earmuffs and blinders. Another thing, by being around these guys at Big Ten Media Days, again, when we were getting to actually sit there and talk to them and interview them face to face, they are all, to a man, just talked about earmuffs and blinders, that they keep the noise out. And again, they are all, to a man. They are one. They are a unit. And there is nothing more powerful than that. I think that's just, it's blowing my mind how together they've stayed and how they view everything as far as positivity, like I've said. But you got to have talent, and you got to win, and you got to do the things that you have to do to win. But that's the thing about this team. They have a ton of talent, and I don't know what side they're more talented on, defensively or offensively. It's really hard to tell because they've got All-Americans on both sides of the ball. And it's going to be fun to watch. And against an Iowa team that is always tough defensively, I'm wondering what their front is going to be like, if that's going to be able to sustain or hold Indiana, and then vice versa. Is Indiana's defensive line, they have to get to the quarterback. While Indiana has a great secondary, you can't leave guys out just to run around. You have to put pressure on them and get him down. And we'll see who handles that. Is this going to be a game that they score many points? Probably not. It's not what Iowa likes to do, but Indiana does. So Indiana is, last year, I think, averaged 30 points. I think they're going to be a quick strike offense. First game, it's hard to be sharp. It's hard to have it all ready, but I would not be surprised if Indiana 28, 30-point range in this game. That's hard to do on the road in now Kinnick Stadium, but it's going to be interesting.
I don't have the stat in front of me, Jim, but and I'm sure, Mark, you can pull this up quickly, but Iowa leads the nation in a number of straight games where they've held an opponent to under 24 points. I believe it's at 22 right now. Wow,
that's a great stat.
I believe it's at 22 right now. And the second, I think BYU is next in line, and I think they're in the single digits for straight games they've held an opponent that low. So, yeah,
what was the low, Mark?
24, I believe.
Wow, that's a great stat.
Yeah, in fact, I think Big Ten Network posted a graphic about that today on social media. But it is, but again, strength against strength. And I think what we saw last year from Iowa is Iowa has the ability to score points if the running game is working. And I think there's a misconception across the country. I've been saying this for a long time, that Iowa is an elite rushing attack. All right. They've missed on a lot of running backs who have gone on to be, Eno Benjamin, Melvin Gordon, Brees Hall, who now, of course, we know all about Brees Hall at Iowa State, and go on and on and on. So they've been a running back away for many, many years of being elite. But we saw last year with an elite running back, Tyler Goodson, and elite guard play. They were pretty darn elite last year running the football. So if they're elite this year, I could see this game. I mean, we've seen Iowa State games go into the 40s. We had games last year going to the 40s. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because I think both sides of the ball from both ends, from the Indiana perspective and the Iowa perspective, it's a very unpredictable game as far as scoreline. But I think regardless, it's going to be a close contest, no question.
It should be. I definitely, obviously, I think Indiana wins this game. I don't know what my score is yet. I don't know if I'm even close to thinking what that score is going to be yet. I don't know enough about Iowa. I'll be honest with you. I haven't delved into their defense enough. The offense, I know everyone knows about Petrus, but what do they have coming back as far as the running game?
Well, you've got Tyler Goodson. You lose Mekhi Sargent, who is just tearing it up right now in preseason, or was tearing it up for the Titans. Any Iowa fan knows that. He's been incredibly. Actually, I think he's got a good chance of making that 53-man roster when undrafted. So they lose him, but you bring back a guy who is also coming off injury in Ivory Kelly-Martin. You bring back the reigning first-team All-Big Ten running back in Tyler Goodson. You have the best center in the country in Tyler Linderbaum. But again, you have two new tackles potentially. Jack Plum may, if he got some starts last year, maybe he ends up starting. You've got guards who have snaps under them, but again, shots out. Cody Ince should be healthy. Justin Britt's played. They've got guys enough to where I'm confident that they can pick up the slack running the football. I think one thing that we haven't mentioned is I think we're going to see even more Wildcat formation from Iowa this year. We saw it last year. We saw it a lot with Tyler Goodson. And it was Tyler Goodson, Tyrone Tracy, Ivory Kelly-Martin. They did have some plays in the Wildcat that involved Amir Smith-Marset, who's gone now, and Mekhi Sargent, who's gone. But Charlie Jones, transfer from Buffalo, one of the best punt returners in the Big Ten, is now a starter at wide receiver. So I think you're going to see him involved more in the jet sweep action and Wildcat action. They've got a lot of depth at wide receiver. Some of it's young. Arlen Bruce out of Ankeny, just south of us here in Ames. He's a guy who's, maybe 5'10", but just incredibly athletic. I think we saw that at the high school level, and I think it's going to translate. Again, it's hard to tell at this level, but I flash back to our conversation with Don on Saturday. Height doesn't seem to mean much anymore. Look at guys like Rondell Moore. So I think there's a lot of talent there. Keegan Johnson's another guy at wide receiver that Nebraska was really high on, and he ended up coming to Iowa from Bellevue, Nebraska. So, I think the offense can put up points. As far as Indiana's defensive line, it's going to, you're going to get excellent line play from Iowa. Now, will it be elite? We don't know. So, but Indiana's going to have to be ready. They're going to have to be ready to play between the trenches if they want any chance to win on the road. And my question to you, Jim, is how many games has Michael Penix started with a crowd on the road, true road games?
You know what? That's a good question. I'd have to go back and count that because he didn't even play. So missed half of those games. Not a lot.
Yeah. So,
because he's missed so many games. So
he's in the same boat as Petrus, except Petrus is playing at home. I think the crowd noise is oftentimes overrated because I think oftentimes it kind of drowns out I think it can hurt both sides of the ball.
You just get into a rhythm one way or the other.
Yeah. But I think that's an interesting storyline. You've got Petrus, who has never played before any crowd, and Penix, who's in a very similar situation, but Petrus does have the home crowd, and Petrus will have the road crowd next week. So there's another storyline. COVID did so many weird things. There's a lot of unpredictability all across the conference.
Yeah, Indiana's defensive line, that's one place where they're very strong and experienced. Not only do they have depth there, they have added that some through transfer market. You've got Ryder Anderson, who came in from Ole Miss. So they have gotten bigger and stronger there and deeper. But everybody that is there has been there. This is all experience. These are either graduate seniors or senior redshirt seniors, whatever. These guys have all experience across the line. There's nobody here that one backup cornerback is a freshman. And man, he must be playing very well because he's backing up Tywan Mullen, who was an All-American. So how good must that freshman be? But yeah, defensively, they are just good. You've got Marcelino McCurry, Ball coming back from an injury. He's playing a Husky position, which is a hybrid position that they are incorporated in to this defense. It can be a stand-up edge rusher. It can drop back into coverage, and so that takes a special athlete to do that. But they've added some wrinkles to their defense. But everyone else, you've got Reese Taylor, who used to be an all-state quarterback here at Indianapolis, who's been in the defensive backfield for Indiana. Of course, Tywan Mullen, like I said, Raheem Lane. These guys have all been there playing senior. They're solid across, just like Iowa is in the secondary. But Indiana's entire defense is just full of experience, and they've gotten bigger, stronger, and faster. But the line, that is, I think, the biggest difference of all of Indiana. Their entire team is the defensive line is probably the biggest difference. The most was added to it. It grew the most. And as you look at that, you're like, wow, those are all solid players. I mean, you go 2-3 deep and you're like, that's pretty good. So it's going to be fun to watch. Not again, because this is not a non-con game. It's going to be a battle. What's the weather going to be like? It's finally cooled down here. I hadn't thought about that.
I think it's going to be cooler. I haven't looked at the forecast.
It had been very, very hot here. So I'm like, and makes it, boy, when you go into a 15-degree difference, if it's the other way, it makes the wrong difference sometimes. You see that in bowl games too much.
One thing that I did say, and I know, Mark, we may have to be wrapping this up soon because you got another live show, but one thing I did want to throw in real quick here. Iowa did one thing that stood out to me in the offseason, and I did talk about this in spring. I was a little bit surprised with the number of players who did not opt to get that extra year because of COVID. I compare it to like an Iowa State who had tons of guys return, and now they've got 3 All-Americans, potential first-team All-Americans coming back. Coy Cronk, I mean, he's the first that comes to mind. Was a 4-year starter at Indiana, comes here, struggles with injuries, and leaves. I don't understand it. I don't know what's going through these kids' minds. I'm sure they have.
I never understood why he left Indiana. That shocked me.
Well, it just never worked in Iowa. Mark Kallenberger, he had a history. His brother had some falling out with an Iowa assistant coach that kind of came forward last summer. So that's kind of understandable. But, Jack Heflin on the defensive line, Austin Schulte on the defensive line. Lots of guys that I thought really could have benefited from coming back for an extra year. So, I don't know how many guys does Indiana have coming back because of the extra COVID year.
A lot. Ty Freifogel is probably the highest profile of those, but a lot. One that I thought was Whop Fillier.
Right.
I thought that he would, but he did not. And I guess made the right choice, but I think it made Indiana better. I'm going to say Whop's a dynamic player, but he's just a little too much of a wild card.
And they've got you guys have the transfer wide receiver from
DJ Matthews from Florida State.
From Florida State. So no, wide receiver, skill position talent from transfer from Freifogel, and of course Penix coming back. Pretty darn
Miles
good.
Marshall. I mean,
Miles Marshall.
Tim Baldwin Jr. in the backfield. They're pretty. The offensive line. They're pretty good. I mean, but you said something in the first 2 minutes of the show. Injuries changes everything.
So are they healthy right now?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying, once you get playing, you start off with that, but once you get into the game and injuries can change that for you. So hopefully everybody stays healthy because it's a lot more fun for it to be that way. So I'm looking forward to a hell of a game. It's just going to be spectacular, I think. I'm looking forward to waving to the kids as much as anything.
We can agree on that. No question.
Absolutely. Iowa, Indiana, Certainly, I was asked a number of times this week what games I'm looking forward to, and the obvious ones come to mind. Georgia's playing Clemson and so forth. But for that 3:30 Eastern time window, this is my game. This is the best game of the day, certainly during that window, and it's competing against Alabama and Miami and some other ones. But this one is a huge one in the Big Ten. And boy, I was hoping to get some kind of lean between all the information and the insight I was absorbing over the last 60 minutes, because I'm going to have a difficult time picking this one. And I don't want to just to default to the home team. I don't want to go that route. I just want to have a reason why I'm selecting one or the other. But it's going to be a rough one.
And Mark, let me put in a plug just real briefly for our post game on Saturday.
For sure.
Because Don Patterson has season tickets. So he's going to join us as soon as he gets home, but he's got season tickets, so he'll be there. The former Iowa coach under Hayden Fry. So he will be there with us shortly after the game, but we'll be there to cover, hopefully, for Iowa fans, it's a win. But again, I agree, toss-up at this point.
Iowa, Indiana postgame with Corey and Coach Patterson after the Iowa-Indiana game on the Iowa channel. Please subscribe there, and also on our Big Ten channel as well. Jim, we appreciate you joining us so much. Everybody follow Jim Coyle on Twitter, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, also the publisher and founder of Rivals there at IU. And
well, not the founder, but
right
close
there on
enough.
the banner. What's
Perfect.
that, Jim?
I said, not quite the founder, but close enough. I appreciate it. It makes me feel like a pilgrim, at least.
I must have misheard something that I gave Jim some lofty.
Jim's going to have to answer some questions tomorrow morning.
Well, thanks, guys.
We appreciate get you into trouble, Jim.
No,
you're welcome here anytime.
Appreciate you guys. Had a great night.
Thank you so much, Jim.
All right,
Corey, as always, appreciate you and everything that you're doing for our Iowa coverage there at our Iowa channel.
It's been fun. It's going to be a great Saturday. Mark, college football back, and we're here to bring everybody the details leading up to it and following the conclusion of the game Saturday. So it's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. Iowa, Indiana, 18-17 in the country. Wow. And folks, if you keep it right here where you're planted right now for the next stream, just hold tight for a couple minutes. I'll be right back with our predictions special right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Corey, have a good night.
Take care, Mark.